the top pelvic floor exercises for urinary incontinence, and today I'm showing you with the chair. I just want you to see first though the anatomy, because I think once you see the anatomy of the pelvic floor organs, it just helps you. And remember, all of the muscles of the pelvic floor, they lie under these organs, especially the deep bowl muscles. What they do is they cradle and they hold all of these organs in position. So as you can see, here's vaginal vault, here's the bladder. Right at the base of the bladder, there's this area called the trigone. It's the really sensitive area of the bladder that if enough urine hits in that area, oh my goodness, all of a sudden it feels like I have to go. I want you to know that the bladder was built to hold 2 to 4 hours worth of urine. That's a long time actually that bladder, because remember that smooth muscle inside the bladder can expand and it can contain that urine for quite a bit of a time. So knowing that it can do so, it helps your brain be more in control. Think of it, however, for those of us who have a uterus, that uterus is lying near that bladder and can give downward pressure to the bladder. So that if I do not have good support of the floor muscles and good support also of the deep abdominal muscles who sustain that whole bladder through their fascial tissues, I can have a leaky bladder only because I do not have the musculoskeletal support that I need. So let's go through a few exercises and kind of understand and know that these deep abdominal muscles are key components to actually help lift and control the bladder through their fascial line. They also lift and control all these deep abdominal muscles, deep pelvic floor muscles as well. So here we go. The first one, for those of you who maybe feel like, hey, I can't get on the ground or I can't stand for very prolonged periods of time, get in your chair and get a nice position. So you're gonna stack your upper girdle, which is up here, over your lower girdle. So I don't want you way out here in a big Donald Duck butt, and I don't want you big back here in a big Pink Panther. I just kind of want you stacked evenly so the upper trunk and the lower trunk are over each other. Then I want you to understand that your feet have everything to do, the arch of your foot and your ankle and foot control has everything to do with how hard or how easy it is for the pelvic floor to contract. So in this position, if you have a little towel, just lay it on your floor, and then you're just going to pull that towel out towards you, and you're just going to do a little bit of a towel scrunch. As I scrunch my towel, I automatically am giving information to that whole pudendal nerve and to muscles that are in the intrinsic of the foot, right? That help to stabilize at the floor. So the stronger my arch is, so if I have an arch that's really fallen, so it flops over into the floor and it's not strong enough, then the floor becomes dysfunctional as a result. So what we want is to build the arch control. So you can use a towel scrunch like this. I usually do about 2 to 3 minutes on each foot, because now you're going to build that power in the arch. And that power in the arch then allows the pelvic floor to function way more efficiently. If you don't have a towel, what you can do is we do what we call an arch up. So you can take that arch and you're just going to lift it almost like I'm pulling with a string. I leave my toes flat to the floor and I'm just going to pull that arch and up, little hold, 5, 10 count. You're going to build the power in the arch, which will automatically assist the floor in its function. So it's a great, easy way to do so. At home, what you'd like to do too is now you're going to say, hey, can I actually rock my pelvis backwards and forwards? So I can do an anterior tilt. It puts the muscles of the floor on more elongation. That's the Donald Duck butt, right? And then I can do a posterior tilt. That actually contracts the floor, and it actually helps the floor have more power to it in that posterior rock. If you feel like none of this wants to move at all, then guess what? The floor then is going to be too stiff and too tight. You should be able to rock and roll through this motion really easy. Take your hand, put it on your, sacrum back here in your rear end. Put your front hand in the pelvic region here. So kind of just the tips at the pubic ridge, and help your tissue rock forward and back so you gain more range of motion. As you do so, you're going to mobilize the floor, and the floor gets more motion to it as you do it. What I want you to do now is put your hands on your deep transverse muscles. It's kind of your hands in your pockets muscles. When you're going to pull them in, you're going to pull them lightly in and up towards your nose. You don't over cinch them. You're not trying to walk around or sit in a posterior tilt where everything is cinched up. That is not the point of it. You learn to utilize these muscles lightly because you know when you drag and draw them up and in, they automatically do what? They lift the bladder and they close the urethral sphincter, so you get way less leakage. In this position then, as you're going to pull tummy muscles in, all I want you to do is take your heel and try to come up and tap your knee. So you'll take your foot, tap your knee, hold 1, 2, 3, 4. This muscle, the obturator internus and the hip external rotators, what do? They actually help give support to the bladder on either side. In order to elongate the muscle then, you do the contraction and then you can tap out. When you tap out in that position, you get a little bit of a stretch to the floor as you go there. Your next exercise is going to be an easy one. If you have a pillow at home, I'm just using a little ball here. Put it between your knees. And these crazy gastroc muscles back here and the soleus muscle, they help the floor have better power. In this bent knee position, all I'm going to have you do is lightly squeeze on the ball. That stimulates the pelvic floor as well. So you get a little bit of closure there as you do. You're not over cinching, you're just kind of lightly holding. You're going to hold on the ball and you're going to do a little heel raise up and down. As you do so, think about the pelvic floor lightly contracting as you go up, and you hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then as you release and you go down, tell the floor to relax and to let go. You can use your breath with this because breath work works wonderfully to help control the pressure so that you don't get down pressure to the bladder. So I can take a nice deep breath in here. The pelvic floor elongates. Remember, my ribs expand. And then as I go up to my tiptoes, I'm actually going to contract the floor, lifting it up towards my nose. I'll do a little hold here. And then I do what? As I go back down, I'm going to breathe in. So I breathe in, I relax, I exhale on the harder work. So if you kind of always remember this, you blow before you go. So anything heavy you're lifting, anything heavy you're doing, say I'm going to get up from my chair, sit to stand, and I always leak when I do that motion. What do? I bring my tummy muscles in lightly. I'm going to rock my pelvis forward as I go. My tummy muscles are still held in, and I'm going to blow out as I do that motion. So ready? Pull belly muscles in. I rock forward. Belly muscles are still controlled as I'm rocking forward, and then I'm going to blow air out. Because I know if I'm blowing air out, automatically when I blow the air out, I'm going to take the pressure, that downward pressure off the bladder off of it, so I have way less likelihood of any leakage. So this crazy ball is a great little tool to use. In this bent knee position, remember we just did our heel raises, but now you could also do your tap ins, your tap outs. Again, I'm nicely stacked. I have a light contraction to the floor. I'm stopping the flow of urine, and I can tap my foot in and out. On the in motion, the floor contracts. On the out motion, I get a stretch. So the ball's just a fun, great little way for you to be able to strength train your hips, release some of the tension to the floor at the same time you're strength training, and it allows the floor to have more mobility because the hip has more mobility as well. The next thing in the chair that's a great thing to do, and so many of you, because you sit maybe longer periods of time than you ever did before, in that sitting position, sometimes you need to release some of the tension in some of these deep hip flexors, because those deep hip flexors sometimes can, give too much tension to the floor. So what you can do is sit on the edge of your chair, stabilize yourself with your other hand on your chair, and take your leg back behind you in this position. What does that do? It elongates these hips, the hip motion, the hip muscles. You have the deep hip muscles in here, and you have a long hip muscle here. And so you're elongating them, and that releases tension to the pelvic floor and to the pelvis in general, because you don't want that to be so short and so tight. Some of you will share with me, like, you get up to get out of your chair and it's almost like you can't even transition to straight up. And if you can't do that, you have to be able to release this tension in the front of this area. So this is a great place to also practice your pelvic floor contractions. So in this position with this nice elongation, I can actually do 5 quick, stop the flow of urine. And then I can also do a nice 5 count hold. So I can practice quick contractions. And remember, the pelvic floor muscles have 2 sets of muscles. Some of them are fast twitch and some of them are slow twitch, right? So it's same muscle belly, but some have more power for long sustained contractions and some have more quick contractions. So we practice quick contractions first. So 5 quick, stop the flow of urine. I can do anal sphincter contraction here. Why am I talking about anal sphincter contraction? Because the anal sphincter stabilizes at the base of the bladder so that it doesn't let the neck of the bladder drop down. So as much as we want the urethral sphincter to do its practice, we also want the anal sphincter to do it as well. Last exercise here in the same position is I can do a nice hip adductor stretch. Remember, this muscle goes into the first layer of the floor with its fascial tissue. So sometimes if this big muscle in here is just too tight, too stiff, it's making the floor too hypertonic or too short. So it elongates the muscle, and then I can practice those same stop the flow of urine and stop from passing gas, that anal sphincter contraction. Again, 5 quick you'll do, and then 5 slow contractions. The goal of any exercise program for urinary incontinence is to do about 30 reps a day of stop the flow of urine or anal sphincter contractions. It doesn't matter whether they're fast or slow contractions, you want both, because that's going to help you get the sustainability of that floor to give you the power and the closure that it needs. So thanks for being here. These are all the chair exercises, top pelvic floor exercises for urinary incontinence in the chair.